Welcome back to the Energy Sovereignty Project for our quick topic today. We'll be discussing why the public utilities are so frightened of home batteries. This may not be all that quick of a topic since we have a lot to cover, so let's get started so we can make this video as short as possible. Last month we attended a meeting with our local utility, SMUD, where they were going to announce their intent to charge their solar customers $8 a month per kilowatt of PV production capacity. Well, for most of the customers, that would be about $40 a month additional on their bill. For the Energy Sovereignty Project, it would be $80 a month. Our normal utility bill was a little over $100 a month. That's without any solar investment whatsoever. So you can see that the people that had invested in PV systems, they weren't going to take that sitting down. And so it was a really interesting but unfortunate meeting. But SMUD's issue is a complicated one, however, and not one that's unique to them, but one that also applies to any local electric utility provider that happens to be in an area where there is substantial solar contribution. And so let's take some time to carefully unpack all this in a way that folks can follow. Sometimes it gets a little large to wrap your head all around. So to start off with, let's present you with a community that we will call Sunny Anywhere USA. So here's Sunny Anywhere USA. The community happens to be just south of Sacramento, California, but it might be anywhere along this latitude or at an elevation that's below 3,000 feet. You'll generally have these types of production numbers. So what you see here is a collection of 82 houses in two contiguous blocks with a couple of courts. And within this area, there are 5 homes producing solar power. I've chosen this small area because the density of solar is about what this area has on an average. It's a small enough bite to allow us to chew on all this without choking on it. This will allow us to examine how this all works on a neighborhood level before we later on examine how the problems are compounded when you look at a larger area. But what we have here are 5 homes with solar, and these homes appear to have about half the power output of the Energy Sovereignty Project. We have about 10.2 kilowatts of solar production, which yields about 7.6 kilowatts of real world production during summer. And these homes seem to be homes that are producing in that 4 to 5 kilowatt range, close enough to call it half and still err on the side of honesty. So each of these homes consumes 0.6 kilowatts in their idle state. Generally, that's the hours where the kids are at school, you're at work, and so that's a good solid number that we've seen from the Energy Sovereignty Project to go ahead and use that would cover the refrigerator and all other appliances that just happen to be running. And so with that relative output of these homes at idle established, now we can try and see if we can tease out a dollar amount. So here is SMUD's rate structure, and for the purposes here, we're only interested in the 120 days of summer rates. And the rates that you see here cover these portions of solar production. That's what we've got as far as the rates per time of day. So this gives us total production time of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. roughly. But to keep the math simple, what we're going to do is we're going to smooth out this production curve by using 6 hours instead of 12. And that will allow us to average the actual use over that period of solar contribution. And this will also will include in here 1 kilowatt to be used by the home at idle. So again, we want to try and keep all of this honest. That's roughly twice what a normal idle is. So what I did to come up with that figure was I averaged about the amount of power that our home uses in a 24-hour period, and then decided to use that on the high end. Again, I want all these numbers to be realistic or favoring the utility, so that when you do hear these numbers, you'll be able to immediately understand this is as good as it gets for the utilities. So, where the Energy Sovereignty Project can supply 10 homes with our overage, what we would send to the grid if we weren't charging the batteries, these homes will be able to power 5 homes. All right. So now let's take a look at what that looks like in sunny anywhere USA. That's 25 houses. All right. So 25 houses for 6 hours a day, and then taking that rate structure and averaging it so that we averaged the 2 highest rates together, and then we averaged that average rate with the lowest average, again to try and err on the side of honesty. That gives us 17 cents a kilowatt hour. So each of these homes at idle is using 0.6 kilowatts for 6 hours. That's 3.6 kilowatts times the 25 houses. That gives you 90 kilowatt hours. And that is $15.30 a day. For that 120-day period that is covered in that peak time rate structure, that comes to $1,836. That was the amount of revenue that was generated by those solar contributors that went to SMUD. The utility didn't have to produce that power. They did give credit to the greenhouses for the kilowatts that they produced during that period, but they still pocketed the cash. Now that's the important thing to remember here. So now, in the sake of honesty, this is where I'm now forced to also play devil's advocate here. All of those gray houses still needed power. And so it isn't like SMUD can just shrug their obligation and not send power to those houses. So if SMUD isn't efficient about where it gets its power from and how it gets the power to the community, all the benefits of gathering that cash from the peak time of day use rates, that's all gone. And so it is important that they be efficient and able to manage that. And then again, we talked previously about the duck curve. That's why I'm very sympathetic to these utility providers when faced with things like the duck curve. We'll move on and we'll get to that, touch on that a little bit later. So as you can see, the situation is still manageable. What we're being told is the issue is the back and forth to the grid, again, based on that duck curve. Now that's partially true, but that's what they're counting on. The best lie is 80% truth. History's taught us that every time we're sold a bill of goods. And that is what SMUD is relying on as they try to fool the consumers and the regulatory bodies short term. So let's keep digging at this and find out why the utility companies are so scared of individuals owning batteries. And they are so scared of the individuals owning batteries that the utility companies are the ones that now all of a sudden want to be the ones that provide them to you. So let's take another look at Sunny Anywhere USA. Now imagine every one of these homes adds solar to the roof. This is the disaster scenario that SMUD and likely your own local utility is trying to sell you. Should this actually happen, it would be a disaster. Without anywhere to store the power, you wind up getting into a situation where there's no possible way that the power plants are going to be able to ramp up fast enough to supply the incredible load that'll suddenly appear at sunset. Now that's true, but the scenario that they're painting is one hell of a nasty lie to cover up the truth. So, forgetting about energy sovereignty for a moment, let's face it, not many are ready to invest in 60 to 90 kilowatt hours of battery storage in their garage. But instead, let's look at the neighborhood here and imagine if every one of these homes bought just 2 Tesla Powerwalls. No more yellow houses surrounding the greenhouses. Why? Well, because those homes are no longer sending the excess power out the utility lines. They're saving the power for use during the evening at their own home. The Energy Sovereignty Project home uses 16 kilowatt hours or so of power between the time the sun stops contributing to solar and the time it starts contributing on the following day. We refer to that as a total solar day. Each Powerwall 2 is capable of 15 kilowatts of storage, but they buffer it down to 13 and a half. So you have roughly 27 kilowatts of storage. So you have plenty to get the home through the evening and 10 kilowatts or so to spare in case of a power outage or in case you have a rainy day. So now the truly terrifying thing that should be on the mind of our local utility, I know if I worked for them it would be something that I would be bringing up, is the reality of this scenario of people putting in these power walls. It could happen in a matter of weeks. So in less than a month, that entire neighborhood of 80 houses could raise the required amount of power to service it by 25% or more immediately. So this is cause for some extreme panic, yeah? No more than the scenario of every house immediately getting solar. That's just not going to happen. The reality is that the utility companies are looking at the monetary impacts of how this is going to trickle down and affect their situation. The reality is that people are going to be adding batteries with their solar panels. They're not just going to be buying solar. Most of these people are also going to be moving to an electric vehicle for their transportation. So in our local area, subsidies for battery installations have brought the cost of a Powerwall 2 down to about $4,600 installed. The state of California gave $1.2 billion to PG&E to administer a self-generation program to allow people to get batteries into the homes. And so this is coming. This is coming. And the local utilities know this. So why is it that almost nobody knows about this program? Why is it that at the time the Energy Sovereignty Project got its batteries at the end of 2018, we were the only ones in SMUD's entire service area that was taking advantage of this rebate? Could it be that SMUD had negotiated a way to get hold of some of this rebate money? So at that terrible meeting that we had with SMUD, one of the things that stood out for me was that they were trying to convince people what a terrible idea it was to get home batteries. Only then did they admit in the meeting that they'd been running a secret battery test program for the better part of a year, a little over a year. Well, it wasn't any real shocker to me because I've been developing the Energy Sovereignty Project now for 3 years, ever since Tesla came up with the redesigned Tesla Powerwall and the new cost structure. Right? I immediately saw that though it was still pricey, even at retail, we'd hit that break-even point where it would cost you over the period that these batteries and solar panels would last exactly the same amount as buying it from the utility company. Okay, that got my interest because I know that tomorrow is not today, and that as the battery prices come down, as volume starts to increase, more people adopt the technology, then you get economies of scale where these things are going to wind up being even more attractive. So why was SMUD trying to keep people from installing the batteries? Well, it's because they want to be the ones to install the batteries. On average, of that 17 cents per kilowatt hour, and assuming that you've got a monthly consumption of each of these houses at around 20 kilowatt hours a day. Again, I'm being kind. The average is probably somewhere around 30 kilowatt hours, but we'll go with the 20. Each of these homes is looking at a power bill of about $102, plus the $20 connection fee. So, as you can see, again, I'm being extremely generous with my estimates. All right? It's likely that both the usage and the overall bill is going to be higher than that each month. But again, it's good enough for what I'm about to demonstrate right here. So in this local community of Sunny Anywhere, USA, that's $10,000 collected from just this small group of houses monthly. So here's SMUD's coverage area. See the neighborhood? Let me magnify to that shown in the red square. See it? Now, as more and more homes get batteries, eventually the amount collected by the utilities will only be that $1,640 that's collected in that $20 connection fee for that period. So you saw SMUD's coverage area. So here's the records that SMUD listed in 2018, and it shows that they have 20,000 customers with solar at an average output of, like we said, 5 kilowatt. And so now if you'll remember our numbers, and we apply those numbers to the 20,000 solar providers, that comes to $61,200 a day in lost revenue. So we're covering that 120-day period in this discussion, just the peak period. That's a loss to our local utility of $7.3 million. Gone. And that's exactly how SMUD is looking at it. They're looking at it in a monetary way. It's likely also that's how your local utility is looking at it. They aren't looking at this as a reduction in what they have to generate. You know, they're looking at it as a huge problem for them financially. And what they're not allowing for is that cooperation then between them and their customers. They're setting up this adversarial relationship. And this isn't going to happen overnight. But when it does happen, SMUD wants to be the ones that are there with the batteries and the solar. Your local utilities as well, I'm sure. So just this last week, I was sent a link to a survey that SMUD was conducting regarding solar and battery power solutions. We'll bring those up here one at a time. And this is just part of the survey. There are several other parts of this examining whether SMUD's customers would be willing to consider a solar and battery farm or wind and battery farm that was remote, or a solar and battery farm that was local and community based, or whether they would be interested in having batteries at their home with solar supplied by them. None of these options, none of them, did they even hint that they would be interested in working with the homeowners that wanted to own their own equipment and have that power at their home. Every one of these was based on a fixed upfront rate structure that they would then apply to your bill. That was a huge red flag. So their argument obviously is it costs money. Well, of course it costs money. Here's where I need to be clear. I'm not against having these kinds of local resources. I think that they're an incredible benefit for our culture moving forward, but we have to work together on it. I'm all for it. But setting up a solar and wind power station remotely is absolutely no different than setting up a coal-fired power plant. They don't try and charge us up front for that. They don't try and charge you a fixed rate on your bill to pay for that. What they do is they roll the cost of those infrastructures into the cost that you pay per kilowatt hour for the power that you buy. What else to say on that? So what I'm against is SMUD isn't viewing this as a cooperative effort. Instead they seem to be insisting on setting up an adversarial relationship with their own customers and then trying to sell it as a green program, instead of just simply presenting it what it is. It's a solid 21st century power program that doesn't involve destroying the environment in the process. They, like I said, they don't charge an upfront fee when they build a coal plant. I don't know why they think that they can get away with doing that with a battery farm. So the difference that we see here now and why we're seeing this adversarial relationship is that the utility companies are scared to death that people will do exactly what the Energy Sovereignty Project is doing. That's the last thing they want us to see that happen en masse. They've never before been put in this position. They've never before been put in the position where they are in direct competition with their customers. And they don't like it. They don't like it one bit. Now, we've gone on about the utility companies, but we're not even done. We're not even talking about just the power to the home anymore. In the month of April, the Energy Sovereignty Project did nearly all of its driving on nothing but sunlight. Spare sunlight. Not even the sunlight that was running the home, but extra sunlight. And that resulted in over 1,200 miles of free driving. That's the equivalent, if you use the equivalent size vehicle to a Tesla Model S, you'd be looking at a four-door sedan getting somewhere around 24 miles per gallon, and that's the number that I used for the comparison. So at $3 a gallon, that's $150 that I didn't pay that to a gas station this month. All because batteries were available at my house. I didn't pay it to the gas station. I didn't pay it to my public utility for doing me the favor of installing batteries somewhere. So, fight for your rights. Don't let the public utilities and the government entities put both hands in your pockets and then whisper climate change in your ear just so that they hope that will make it so that you don't notice that they're trying to pick your pockets. Own your own equipment if you can. If you can't, well, then certainly programs like SMUD's will be appealing. But be very careful of the contracts that you sign. If you allow somebody else to install PV on your roof and batteries in your garage, you're opening yourself up for a terrible problem if you decide to sell your home. So, as we close, just remember this isn't all going to happen at once. First, the existing homes that already have solar will get their batteries, and then little by little, self-generating homes will pop up. And as they do so, the battery technology will allow higher capacities at those homes. PVs will get a little better. We'll start seeing an introduction of solar roofs that can add a little more production to the home. And then we'll start seeing a more total shift also to electric vehicle transport. As people find that they have excess power available to them, then they'll decide to make use of it. Now, in our next quick topic, we'll examine just that. I want to examine honestly what those loads look like. When you add an electric vehicle to a household, the household, as we've seen with the Energy Sovereignty Project, hits that point where vehicles become viable as far as that roughly 20 to 30 mile a day range around April or May, and then that should last out until September, October, all right? But what do you do in winter? What does your power consumption look like in winter? And we've got enough solid numbers now with the Energy Sovereignty Project that I feel that I can take a pretty good shot at doing another quick topic about what your actual utility load will be in winter. So we're going to wind up swapping the peak times of the year. Those peak times are going to shift from summer to winter. And so we'll take a look at what that might look like. And as always, I wish you all the very best with your own systems, and thank you for joining us and following the Energy Sovereignty Project for this quick topic. And we'll close it out here. Please feel to like and subscribe if this is something that you're interested in, and we'll see you next time.